Hi everyone, my name is Anne. Thanks for joining me on Art on the Creek. I'm really happy that you're here today with me in my home studio in Parker, Colorado, because it's time for a review. Now, normally on this channel I deal in watercolor. However, I do have a lot of other interests, and pastels have been tugging at me lately pretty vehemently. So I thought we would go ahead and take a look at some pastels. I have several in my art stash, and I thought that we would start off with Sennelier. It's one of my favorites. It's a very well-known brand. So let's go see what this praise is all about. Are you ready? Here we go. Sennelier pastels. You might be wondering why they are so good and why everyone talks about them. Well, they've got a huge history and a wonderful pedigree. It has been synonymous with the finest pastels in the world, which is absolutely true. These are so richly pigmented that in my experience and the different brands of pastels that I have used, they are truly unparalleled. Here is the set that I have that includes the color numbers. They don't have the names here, but they do have the numbers. And I have a set of 40. I think if you're going to get a set of pastels, what you might want to do is to get a set that has somewhere between 30 and 40 colors just to start. When we paint with pastels, we don't really mix colors. You do sort of. It's kind of like if you were to mix with gouache, I guess. And I have seen some artists mix colors on a palette to the side, but for the most part, you're going to be using whatever color it is you have in your pigment stick. So as you can see, these are the oil pastels that they show here, and those are just dreamy. They're like using lipsticks. This is really just their product brochure of all of the products that they offer. Many of you are very familiar with Sennelier, and they have been around for a very long time. As I said earlier, since the late 1800s. Let me take a minute here. I'll just set that aside and let's just see what else is in here. This is pastel card. This is specifically used for soft pastels. You can use oil pastels on it as well, and even color pencil. It has a really gritty tooth. It almost feels like sandpaper, and I think when I passed my hand over it, you could kind of see it grabbing. I have a glove on my hand because I'm getting ready to draw. Whenever I use pastels, soft pastels, I like to have a glove on my hand because it just simply, I don't like that feeling of the chalk on my hand. It just dries them all out. I'm saying chalk, but it's really not chalk. It's a pigment stick. And I'm not a fan of the way that feels on my hand. So this particular brochure here talks about different kinds of paper that Sennelier makes. I have never been disappointed with any Sennelier paper. I've used their watercolor paper and their pastel paper, and I look for them whenever I can. They're not as easy for me to get here in Colorado, and I always have to order them online, and sometimes the cost and the shipping just gets to be prohibitive. But if you can get your hands on some Sennelier paper, I really recommend it. I did find the pad that I'm going to use, that big white pad under there. I found that on sale at a craft company here that we have in the United States. It's called Joann's, and I got one of their 50% coupons, so I got lucky. So I got that big pad for half price. The reason that I like it, even though it's specifically designed for oil pastels, I use soft pastels on it as well because I do like the glassine that comes in between each page. But yes, the pastel papers, you can even make your own surfaces. You can get a pastel ground, you can use gesso, you can even work on actual sandpaper from the hardware store if you don't want to invest in any pastel paper. So here's how they come packaged. Little foam to protect it, and then there you have it. There are your colors. So I am just thoroughly impressed with everything about these. You can see that by the non-uniform shape. Now I have already used this set, but you can see by the non-uniform shape of those pastels that they are definitely handmade and hand rolled. So that care in the manufacturing really is also something that really stands out with Sennelier. This particular paper is a Canson paper, and if you are just brand new getting into pastels, I highly recommend this. It's extremely affordable. I think this entire pad of paper was only $5. Blick sells it. I'll put a link in the bottom. I haven't really found it anywhere else. So, but as always, every link that I put in the bottom to date, none of them are affiliate links. And if they are, I will definitely disclose that in the description. Do your own shopping. Don't feel that you have to shop through my links. I'm just putting them up there to kind of as a convenience for you. So let me speed up the swatching on this, and you can see how vibrant these pigments are. As I'm swatching this out, like I said, the colors on the side of the box are just indicated by number. And I will link to the PDF color chart on their website for you. I was going to do kind of a one-to-one correspondence and spell it out for you in the description, but there's kind of a correlation issue. So I'll link to that so that you can see that online. Yeah, it's funny because I've been focusing on Sennelier so much lately that my French is kind of coming back to me. So that's a little bit of a bonus. Some of these are extremely soft and some of them are a little bit scratchy. 99% of them are buttery soft, and I am absolutely in love. Look at that white. Look how intense that white pigment is. Now, what I'm doing is tapping off the crumbs over there in the trash can. Every time I pick up the pad, you'll see that. I think those two greens, the one on the top, second from the end, and that one right next to the white, I think I flipped those around and didn't quite put them away in the right place, because often you will use a light blue, light pink as a highlight color in addition to white. You can see that some of these sticks broke as I was using them, but don't worry, the pastels, it's just pure pigment, so you can continue to use it. One of the things that's really fun with these is you can hold this stick in many different ways to get many different shapes, lines, marks. Pastel's all about mark making, and really if you want a lot of detail, you can add the use of a pastel pencil. But I prefer to just try and stick with these pastels. Here you go, here's the color range. When you are looking for a set of pastels, I recommend thinking about what you paint. What do you like to paint? Do you like landscapes? Do you like flowers? This particular set of 40 is a good all-around set. You could draw animals, you could draw flowers. The one thing that I think that this set might be lacking is a range of grays. And typically you can purchase a set of color families, or you can certainly augment them with another brand. But for this, for now, for my purposes, I really am enjoying this set. And that's another thing I like about getting this set of 40 is because by using it, you can then go on to figure out which colors that you think, gosh, it would be nice if I had that. I want to add that one on. Or maybe, gosh, I've already gone through the white. Maybe I should get a couple more of those. Here's the pastel pad I'm using today. It is, like I said, 4 oils, but you know me. I'll use whatever's in front of me, and there is no problem in using chalk pastels or soft pastels on this. Oil pastels are sometimes called hard pastels, but that can kind of be a misnomer because there are some really hard soft pastels. So there you go. That'll keep you up at night. Let me get set up here and we'll see what we're going to paint today. Here's our photo, you guys. Oh, he's adorable. We have had a couple labs in our life, and this little guy is so cute. And I really wanted to try painting something black because in watercolor, you know, I know exactly how to go about this. So I am going to be full disclosure here. I will fully admit that this is kind of an experiment for me. I have never painted a black animal in pastels, so I'm going to kind of make him a little bit illustrative. I was thinking of that book Blue Dog, and I don't know if you've seen that, but it's a wonderful story, and it's the blue dog on the front is very, very whimsical, very childlike, and that was what I was thinking when I was trying to draw this little man here, and just wanted to use this light blue or aqua, whatever color that is, in order to get the highlights down. So, and I wanted to make him look wet, which I thought would be pretty easy to do with these pastels, given the fact that I could get the base color down and then go on to the fur that's wet. Okay, so this is not a tutorial. Let me go ahead and explain to you some wonderful things about the Sennelier pastels and why I love them so much. Their softness. Over and above, by far, the softest pastels that I have ever tried. That's true of their oil pastels as well. But this formulation that they use is the softest and most richly pigmented set of pastels that I have ever tried. I've tried a lot of different kinds, and this particular one is incredible. It's so easy to blend. It's so easy to use. There's very little dust. The breakage is probably on par with many other hand-rolled pastels. I don't think that I've found any pastels that particularly don't break because sometimes you intentionally want to break them. So there's a lot that you can do with these. With they're very versatile. You can shave them off with a X-Acto knife and use that powdered pigment. You can mix it with water. You can paint with it. There's just so many things that you can do to make this really a versatile medium. And the mixing with water is really fun. Do you remember when you were in elementary school, I'm going to say, and perhaps you used a chalk drawing, whether it was on the sidewalk or on the chalkboard, but whenever you got that chalk wet or dipped it in water, it really deposited a very rich, deep color, more vibrant. Now with the kids' chalk that we're just using to make a hopscotch, I think that it probably dried the same. But with this particular one, when I blended the background, I used a damp blending sponge, and that really helped to establish a very vibrant, very richly pigmented, smooth background to work from. So that's why that looked a little bit different when it was blending. Now I'm going to go over it here again with some more pigments, but for right now, for what we're doing, I've got a lot of the different shades going in and I'm having no trouble at all. Like I said, they're so easy to blend. I used a variety of blending tools. I used my fingers. I used the soft blending sponges. If you're going to look for blending sponges for your pastels, by the way, Soft, S-O-F-F-T, is a brand that I like. You can also use things from the makeup aisle. Anything that has very small cell foam. Those wedge makeup sponges we'll use, or sometimes they look like a 3D teardrop. My daughter uses those, but I've never used one. So if you want to go to the dollar store and look for makeup blenders, even the little eyeshadow things, the foam tip that you put eyeshadow on with, those are very, very good for blending pastels. So do keep in mind that these particular tools will lift off an awful lot of the pigment. You might be better with your finger, because in that case you can push that pigment down into the tooth of the paper. Now again, the paper that I'm using is intended for oils, so I probably had a little bit more dust generated from this puppy experiment than I would have had I used that pastel card that was included, that little sample. I'll do a super quick drawing with that one in the end, because I want you to see how on this one I put on a lot of layers to get the pigment really deep and rich, but with that pastel card, it's like a match made in heaven. They're meant to work together. So you can use far less pigment, really push it into that tooth of the paper, and get truly vibrant results. Let's talk about light fastness. You will not have any issues whatsoever. They are truly all pure pigment, all of these pastel sticks, and that really provides for you the maximum possible light fastness. There's no fillers, no clay, nothing that's going to change the intensity of that color, and they're so highly concentrated that just creates that velvet, wonderful stroke that you get when you're working with pastels. All of the every time you put it down on paper, you can really feel that pigment just go right down to your paper. It's kind of hard to explain without having experienced it, but pastels are truly a very tactile medium, and I really love it. I love everything about them. The real advantage to using that pastel card, and like I said, I will show you this at the end, is that you can really push that pigment down into the paper. Now here, this paper has a pretty good tooth on it. It's not as textured as the little sample that came with it, and I'm going to use that little sample. We'll just paint a small little picture on that. But you can see here, I've got no trouble going layer over layer over layer, and I'm going in with a darker blue, putting it over the black, going in with some of the highlights. I even added a brown over the black, and you were able to see everything about that through to the end. When we get to his little kayak that he's standing in, I was able to add in all of those colors. I used an orange, a red, a pink. Everything that I needed was very easy to layer over. Now when you're looking at the colors of the pastels and what's available, you'll notice that some of them are available in larger soft pastels. We have the demi sticks here that I'm using today, and then there are the larger ones that are wrapped in paper. The demi sticks come in 20, 40, and 80 sets, and then the sticks that are wrapped in paper, they're the ones that come in the sets if you're really going to get into pastels, this is a really good way to buy them, because you can get them in sets of 24, but in different variations. So for instance, you can get pure dark pastels, the mid-tones, the light tones, or the iridescents, and those are all in the sets of 24. And then if you are an artist that has a particular focus, they do have sets of 48 that involve the floral, landscape, and portrait sets. And then they have the other sets of in wood cases, which are wonderful because it's a great way to keep your pastels. The full set of 525, which is fabulous. And then it goes down from there. They've got the 250 set. They call that the Royal Collection. The traditional collection is 175. And then they also do the classic, the portrait, and the landscape collection of 50 and 100 and 100, respectively, in wooden cases as well. And the great thing about having that wooden case, you might think, oh my gosh, I don't want that, it's just too cumbersome. It's a great way to store your pastels. They will be protected. And when you carry your pastels with you, or even if you just have them in your studio, knowing that they are well stored and not going to break, and the pigments aren't going to rub off and get all lost in whatever storage method you're using, is truly a gift. I mean, that's a really nice thing to consider when you're working with pastels. Now, this little box set that I have here, my 40 set, has those die-cut little homes for the pastel sticks to just nestle right into, and I have never had any issues with that. You can also get a wooden case to store pastels in separately. You can buy those separately, and they're like a tiny little dresser with drawers of pastels for pastel storage, or colored pencil, anything like that. And those are also, a lot of people do like to have those in their art studio, or wherever you keep your art supplies, even if it's just in a closet. That's totally fine. Here we are on this kayak here. I'm just kind of checking back as I'm doing the voiceover here to tell you what's happening on the blending and the layering. And you know, I don't know if you're really paying close attention, but I think I'm on my 4th or 5th layer of color here, and I could keep going. I mean, this is really astounding. You know, and the other thing about soft pastels that makes them so fun is that if you get to a point where you're layering, and this is true of colored pencil and oil pastels as well, you can spray a workable fixative on top of it and then continue to work from there. Now, frankly, I've never done that on oil pastels because I've never needed to. I have done it with colored pencil and soft pastels, and it does make a difference. You are able to regenerate that tooth and continue to go. And Sennelier also carries a wonderful line of fixatives, rather. The one that they carry that I particularly like is a fixative for oil pastels. That's something that I have found, at least where I am in the world, that it's kind of difficult to find unless you are using the Sennelier brand fixative. And I have been able to find that at brick and mortar art supply stores as well as online. So wherever the price is best for you, that's where I recommend that you get this. And as I'm looking at this, you know what? I just realized I left this little dude's collar off. So you know what? We love him. We love our doggies without a collar. It's kind of just, he's free and easy, and he's just been in the water, and now he's jumped back in the kayak to say hello. So these pastels, have I told you enough about them? Maybe, maybe not. I think that the demonstration here, you'll be able to see how vibrant these pigments are. I truly believe that Sennelier is probably the #1 brand of pastel out there. I've used Rembrandt. I've used Rembrandt a lot. I'm trying to think of some other professional brands that I've used. I've used the Prismacolor new pastels, and those are very nice, but they're a different kind of an animal. They're a little harder. And frankly, that is all my brain is letting me remember at the moment. But at any rate, I reach for the Sennelier often. And the reason that I got this set of 40 is because I bought a few random pieces to start with. I think I just got a few primaries, 2 reds, 2 yellows, 2 blues, 1 warm, 1 cool of each one, and a white and a black. And I went through the white in no time. I loved it so much. I ended up using it just about everywhere. And the black, I do still have that one. I don't use black too often, which is why this was kind of a fun thing for me to paint. I don't really get into the black pastels very often. But yeah, I had no trouble at all, and they were just so buttery smooth that I thought, okay, this is really what I want to continue using. Well, here's our guy. Let's zoom in so that we can take a close look at what we can do with our Sennelier pastels. So The trees I accomplished by taking this blending sponge here and just using a twisting motion. It's very easy to do. You just place the pigment down, and these pastels do half the work for you, which is, as you know, one of my favorite things about art supplies. When you can find an art supply that really does the work for you, and combined with the paper that has a tooth in it and getting that to blend going, it just really makes it so easy. The highlights on the water, very expressive, very easy to add those in. And those sweet little eyes with the highlights, very easy to get those in as well. I like the darker lines of wet fur that we were able to get in, and I've got some pink underneath his ears here and under his chin to help the reflection from the kayak underneath. I was able to get a really dark level right here where I thought that his chest would be the darkest, and his little toes with the highlights there. That's something that I could probably continue to work on. But I have no problem with the way it looks right now for my sketchbook, so I'll probably just leave it like that. So as always, I left out some of the detail and changed the perspective a little bit to make it look a little more whimsical. So that's just me. That's the way I approach things. But what I really like about pastels is that it is so easy, just like it is in watercolor, to get that background to recede and bring your subject forward. So by the blends that you can create with a wet sponge and then smudging the sponge right and left over the water reflections of the tree trunks, by getting those things done, and it is so easy with these pastels, then you can really create that distance and that perspective that way, the depth of field in your artwork. I'm going to set him aside and let's take a look at this sample that they gave us of pastel card. Now this is the only piece of this particular brand that I have. This is the Sennelier pastel card, and I just want to show you the difference. So we saw how it is to use the pastels with that oil pastel paper. The tooth on that is very similar to hot press watercolor paper. But this is a lot more grippy. It's even more so. It's like a rough watercolor paper, which I've never used pastels on, but you probably could. I just have some marks on here from touching it with pigment. So I'm just going to do a quick little study on here. Let's do a sunflower. We haven't done a sunflower in a long time. And I'm going to start with kind of our mid-tone here. We'll get this sunflower to be kind of looking to the left. Now the thing about using pastel card or anything that has a lot of good texture like this, and this particular one was of course formulated to work with the Sennelier pastels, although you can interchange brands, you can do whatever you want. The amount of tooth that is on here is what's really important. The pigment will push down into the paper, and you'll be able to use your pastels a lot more effectively. So when you're blending with this particular paper, I would definitely recommend using your fingers to blend, because you can really push that pigment down into the paper and get it to adhere and have this rich, beautiful color looking back at you. And all of the same things apply. You can go in with multiple layers. You can blend it very softly at first, block in your colors, or you can just simply sketch, which is primarily what I'm doing on this particular one. Now you can see when I tap it on the table there, you can see there is some pigment that does come off, and that's because I didn't push it down into the paper. So if that's something that you want to do to really use that to your advantage, then this is the method that you'll use, where you go in and you really blend it with your finger and push down in. The light blue background is going to help me show you what it's like to put a lighter color on top of a dark pastel card. You might think, oh my gosh, that's so dark, I would never use that color. Well, don't sell it short, because you can there's little bits of that paper that will peek through, and it really does create a wonderful contrast and adds a certain energy to your painting. And this pastel card is available in many different colors, or you could use the Canson textured paper, regular sandpaper. There are so many surfaces available to you, but whatever you do, try the Sennelier pastels. This is genuinely my opinion. I'm not getting paid for this review. I am so in love with these pastels. I can't tell you enough how beautiful they are. I hope you like the puppy, and let me know in the comments what you think his name should be, because absolutely he needs a name. We'll talk to you guys later. Everybody have a great week. Bye now.